Well, welcome. Tonight we have a special person who comes to Milford often, but somebody we don't think about until we need help. We have Sheriff Lou here, but let's start with an introduction.
Sure, Al. Well, great to be here with you. I'm Worcester County Sheriff Lou Evangelitis, and I've been sheriff 8 years now, Al. Believe it or not, I remember coming on your show.
When you were running.
When I was running, and believe it or not, that was like 9 years ago now. So time flies, as people say, but never has life flown for me like it has in my term as sheriff. I've loved this job, every minute of it. It's a challenging job. I'm really proud of the work that we have done as a team. I did promise some things when I ran about changing the culture of the sheriff's department and made a lot of promises, and I'd like to think, and I believe we've fulfilled most, if not all, of those promises. Simple things starting out of the gate, like we talked about, changing the hiring standards, which we've raised them to higher than any other sheriff's department in Massachusetts. You need to have a college degree and or have served the military.
So I don't just have to contribute?
No, well, exactly. Thank you. Because now that was another thing I stopped.
That was a big thing where you had said, if
Yeah.
I want to move up, I best be contributing to the re-election fund.
Yeah, we say it with a smile, but truth be told, that was the culture of the place. It has been throughout many sheriff's departments with elected officials, so campaign contributions are important, but it became a culture of paying to get hired, to be promoted, or working on campaigns and things like that. And I came in and I said, and the first time I believe in Massachusetts history, I called ethics, I sent them emails and said, I want to reestablish my policy that I campaigned on. I will never accept a campaign contribution from an employee or a spouse, and to make sure that ethics, because, in places like that where I came in as an outsider, there were 500 employees there. None of them knew me. I promised no jobs or promotions to anyone in my campaign. So I was kind of the guy that nobody knew what to make of. And the first thing I wanted to make sure of was that any emails I sent talking about fundraising were approved by ethics. So I sent ethics an email that simply said, I am reiterating my policy that this office will no longer accept contributions. And it took a couple of years for people to kind of come to terms with the new way. And the new way
I can't
was,
buy my promotion?
Well, not only that, Al, but it's even worse because all I ask for people, and I tell you, I've interviewed hundreds of people in my time there that we've brought on board, whether it's correctional officers or teachers or substance abuse counselors or civilian staff, many civilian staff. And I tell every one of them, I said, there's no secret, or if you want to know the secret to how to move ahead here, it's pretty simple. You come to work, you work hard, you bring a great attitude. You will go far as you wish to go here. There's nothing else we ask of you. No gamesmanship, no politics, no greasing anyone's palms, no campaign contributions. Simply do your job, do it well, and the most important thing, in a negative atmosphere of corrections, because not only did I inherit what I felt was kind of a deflated department because of I wouldn't want to work in an environment where a guy could get promoted for the wrong reasons or sit around and do nothing because he was connected to people. I wouldn't want to work in that environment. So there was decades I felt of that sort of feeling of people being upset, not happy to work there. So I wanted to change that culture, and it took us a few years to kind of get people to kind of see that the new way was the better way. But once people bought in, I think we've had an extraordinary run. I got reelected in 2016. And that's just reinvigorated us to 6-year terms in politics, which is not the norm.
I was going to say, that's a long time. It's a wonderful idea.
Yeah.
So that you're not out banging the bushes every other year.
Yeah, well, the one thing I'll say, I was a legislator, as you know, for 8 years. And I understand, if you go back, I taught constitutional law in high schools for a while. And, the Constitution was written with the idea of a responsive legislative body called the House of Representatives, a less responsive body to the whims of the people, the Senate. We set up intentionally that way nationally. So I understand there are some reasons for the 2-year term. And in Massachusetts, we have both Senate and House, both have 2-year terms.
2-year terms.
And I can only say that, you are in perpetual campaign mode. That has its upside and its downside. The upside is that you're very responsive, you're always out and about, you're never taking any downtime, but you're also involved in campaigning a lot of time and fundraising constantly. So I can say this as sheriff, having the 6-year term, I can't think of a position in politics that's probably needs a 6-year term more than sheriff, and I'll tell you why. When you come in as sheriff, you're coming in, like I did, for example, against 50 years of a culture that I did not run with, I ran against. and to establish that you would change the culture in a way that I felt was very positive. I believed it was what the people of Massachusetts wanted, which was a sheriff's department that was about public safety and professionalism. If they thought they could run against you in 2 years,
Yeah.
I mean, I had, and not trying to, badmouth the unions, I'm just giving facts. There are 4 different unions up there. They each have different leaderships. They each had different relationships with prior administrations, and there was a different way of doing business. And I came in and I challenged the current culture of the jail. And I think if they felt they didn't have to work with me, that they could have simply said, we'll have him out of here in 2 years.
Yeah, we'll wait 18 months.
Yeah, we'll have our own candidate and we'll take him out. I don't think my first 2 years would have been as productive, but with a 6-year term, you got enough time to establish the new way, demonstrate the positives of the new way, which meant, like I said, imagine this, and I talk about this concept, Alan. I don't talk about this as much anymore, but I haven't been on with you for a while, but this goes back a while now. But I say, with tongue in cheek, imagine establishing a culture of an environment like we have. Very important work as sheriff, by the way, and I can talk about that in great detail later because thankfully we have a little bit of time. But imagine the concept being radical of being promoted based on merit, performance, you know what I mean? As opposed to politics. So, once people understood that, I think the place became a lot simpler and I think people bought in and especially promotions. I really wanted to demonstrate in the hiring process that it was not politics, it was based on your qualifications. So we had very strict standards, including, as I mentioned before, not only did you have to either serve your country or have a college degree, but you also had to take a physical test, very vigorous physical test, written test, drug testing, all those things. And then if you got to the interview process, we would put you through a psychological profile because corrections is a tough business, and there's a lot of people that could do the job well, but they may not be suited for it.
Sheriff Lou, I can tell you that I could not work there. Because when I see people that have hurt children, I don't know that I could be objective. Just whatever liberalism I have goes right out the door for anybody who would hurt a child, but yet, if we want to live in a free society, everybody has their right to due process.
That's right. And our job is in corrections we talk about, and we've got a lot of things. I mean, we have community correction centers outside the jail where we divert people from prison with the judges and the probation department, and we supervise them, we daily drug test them, but we give them opportunities outside the jail. So not everything is inside the jail, but inside the jail, our motto in corrections is care, custody, and control. We're not the judge and jury. So half the people are awaiting trial. That's something maybe people aren't really familiar with. Who is at the Worcester County Jail on a daily basis? Well, in our jail are the people who are awaiting trial. And on any given day, let's say today, there's about 500 of those people.
But what is a jail? I mean, people don't even understand that you have prisons. You have different grades of prisons, federal, state. But I don't think anybody knows what a jail is. I mean, who do you have? Who visits you now?
Well, it's a great question, and I'll tell you, I mean, you mentioned we have a federal jail, which have to do with people who commit federal crimes, and that's where they go to federal prison. In Massachusetts, our system is different than many states. Matter of fact, we have a unique system in some ways, and it goes like this. You're arrested for a particular crime. You go before the judge, the district attorney, your counsel, if you have one, you're at an arraignment. They'll make a determination at arraignment if your charges warrant bail or no bail. And if they no bail could mean it's a low-level crime, so we're not going to hold you. We're going to release you to appear personal reconnaissance in court in a specified date. Or it could be such a heinous crime, so violent.
That you're a flight risk.
And there's no bail. But most people who fall in the middle will be probably put on a bail that could be anywhere from as low as $50 to thousands of dollars. Those people who are either no bail because they're too serious a crime, or those who cannot make the bail that the judge has put on them, will come to the jail. And that means they're awaiting trial. And we've had people in that jail. We just had a guy, believe it or not, on a particular murder charge who just passed 8 years in our jail. He just pled out last week. It was in the papers last week.
He's waiting for trial for 8 years?
Waiting for his trial for 8 years. Yep, that was the longest I've heard in my tenure that we had. But there are many people on, with first-degree murder, second-degree murder, they can be held for several years during that process of hearings and pretrial motions and things like that. Sometimes counsel withdraw, sometimes they fire counsel. So That's a very protracted, but the answer to your question is, in our jail are people who are pre-trial. They have not been gone to court yet, neither going to be found not guilty or who will be released or guilty. And then this is the difference between most states. In Massachusetts, if you're sentenced to less than 2.5 years prison, mostly non-felonies, you go back to that, what they call the House of Correction. So you're sentenced inmate, you go back to the Worcester County House of Correction. So no longer in the jail awaiting trial, you're at what we call the House of Correction, which is, think about it. That's what we try to have it actually be. A place to correct people, to rehabilitate people, because they're going to be there on average less 9 months. Then they're going to get released back into our communities, your communities, my communities, and all over Worcester County and beyond. So our primary job is to really work with those people. I will meet anybody halfway out. We don't coddle people. This is a prison. These people have earned their way in there. And just to dispel any notions that people may have, there aren't a lot of really low-level people that end up incarcerated. Sometimes there's this belief right now that we over-incarcerate people and the jails are full to the brim. Well, in some states that may very well be the case. I believe in Massachusetts we don't over-incarcerate. There are people who are held on low bails, and we have bail reform, and I understand that. An economic reason that people are unable to post a $50 or $200 bail.
So now
I understand that.
Murder,
Yep.
rape, okay, that's one extreme.
Yep.
What is the low end of people that are in the jail?
You can have people like, first-time assault and battery. You really want to have people in jail for just possession of illegal drugs. That's very rare that you'd be incarcerated. But you could be possession with intent to distribute a Class A or Class B substance. You could be breaking and entering, those type of crimes that are nonviolent.
Breaking and entering, you don't necessarily equate them with the same as murderers.
Right.
But you're getting them all together?
Well, that's what we have our jobs to do. We have very specifically, number one, we cannot commingle. It's illegal, frankly, and commingling of pretrial and sentenced inmates. So we have to keep them in different housing units. We have to separate them if there's going to be a group going from maybe to a classroom or substance abuse. We have to make sure that there's no commingling of inmates or even in hallways. We are working on legislation that allows us to mix some people just for certain treatment programming perhaps, but for the most part they're not mingled at all. So that's the first step in that process, is that we separate them. And then you've got the sentenced inmates that I talked about. Well, you've got different standards of security involved with the highest level, especially the pre-trials. The murders and rapists are going to be held in a different area than the lower level offenders. So we have many different blocks we have, whether it be in the main jail or the mods, the Maxi B, Maxi C, different areas of the jail. We know who those people are that are put in those places.
Somebody that, in your opinion, is a danger, somebody's being held for the 4th time for mugging or something.
Okay.
They get put in a special place as opposed to the kid who just got caught for breaking and entering for the first time.
Yeah, like we would try to put people in with similar levels of danger in the same places, so they would be and then we have different levels of supervision of those particular inmates. But we have to also consider, like I'll give you an example now. When someone comes into our facility for the first time, or even the second time, or the third time, we have to go through the whole process of them coming in. And part of that re-entry process, or the entry process into the facility, first question we really ask people are, never mind that we fingerprint them, we get their records, we find out who they are and what their background is. But we ask them, we have to sit down with them, they have to meet with a medical examiner, nurses, as well as our own staff. And the question is, are you under the influence of drugs? Are you detoxifying? You can't believe how many people, I would say well over 80 to 90% of people who are incarcerated probably are incarcerated because of a drug dependency, whether they are high when they come in or that they committed their crimes because of their drug dependency. That's what drives the criminal justice system right now, Al. So we have to establish people right out of the gate. Are you detoxifying? And a lot of people are, and we have what we really more or less consider a detoxification unit inside the jail. And people can go in there anywhere from a day or two to a week or more, depending on what it is, what substance they're detoxifying from. So because of our care, custody, and control, we have to evaluate each inmate as they come in individually. But just so you know how challenging this work is, Al, we've got a facility that was built for 680 people. We have had as many as over 1,200. we have a federal consent decree. We can't exceed 1251 or we violate a federal law. So because our place was, we were sued before I was there. It was for a civil rights violation by an inmate of overcrowding, and they made a settlement based on a capacity of 1251 as the max. Right now we're around 1,000. But the point is, when people come into our facility, right away we have to evaluate who they are. What gang affiliations do they have? When we talk about making sure that inmates are placed in appropriate places, we want to make sure we don't put two competing gang members in the same cell. I mean, many of our inmates, are double bunked. Well, what happens if we put two rival gang members in the same cell? So we have to know how to read tattoos, to figure out who somebody is, use our reconnaissance that we get information from the community, from the arrest report, from the local police department, from the courts, and our own files to evaluate each person, because there's a lot that goes into placement. And what we started in our administration, I'm very proud of this, because believe it or not, when I first got there, I went and visited other sheriffs, and some of them are much better funded than us, and that's a whole nother story. I mean, it's not political, it's a long-standing history, but Middlesex County, for example, Middlesex County has fewer inmates today than Worcester County, and yet their operating budget is over $20 million more. Yeah, so, no, you got that right.
How does that work, though?
Legislative.
Don't all the jails report to the same?
No, we're sort of individual units representing our counties. We were initially funded by the wealth basis of our counties, so Worcester obviously had less money than Middlesex, but then through whatever patronage, some politics over the years, certain people would get hired and the legislature would reward them with I'm not kidding. So my only point of talking about that is there's big discrepancies in that. And I went to visit Hampden County as sheriff, and the guy who was the sheriff at the time, Mike Ash, 40 years, he built a tremendous operation. One of the things he had was an orientation unit. He had a week to get people into his facility and a week with them to determine who he had, what their needs were, get them on the right track. And I thought, that's something I want to aspire to, because in our facility, we had 15 minutes to figure all this out. And that is too much work for people, too stressful, and too open to bad decisions because you don't have enough time to evaluate.
Just reading the tattoos would take you longer than 15 minutes.
So we started something. We actually created a unit with no money. We simply had one area of the jail, one portion we had. We cleared out all the inmates in there. We reassigned them throughout the jail, and we opened up about 26 cells. And we use that as our orientation unit now. And we made it like basically a 3-day program. In those 3 days, inmates come in, they are classified, they're put in there, and then we get 3 days to evaluate them, and then we send them out throughout the facility based on what we've learned in those 3 days. That was a huge step forward for us, and we did it with no resources, just simple common sense approach to doing a better job with the facility we had. So that's a big part of the process too.
How is it determined? Is it if you commit your crime in Worcester County, you go to Sheriff Lou's and...
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So even if you're from Middlesex County, if you've committed your crime here, you go to Worcester?
Yep. But we have people, by the way, we have people in our facility who had warrants for crimes they committed in Middlesex County or Hampden County. So although they're serving time for us, then they will call in those warrants and they will have them appear in the courts in the other counties. So we have a huge transportation department at jail. Most people don't know this. When you see those vans driving around that say Worcester County Sheriff or Middlesex County or whatever county, a lot of times they're traveling in your county because they're transporting inmates from their jail to the other county court every day. We transport probably on average 100 inmates a day. Some to the courts in Worcester County, many to courts beyond Worcester County.
Now, you can't trade him for a future draft pick to say this guy's got to go to Middlesex every day. I'll take one of your Worcester travels. You can't just move him?
No, we've actually had discussions where we do sort of consolidate trips, and we've actually had inmates where maybe Bristol County or Barnstable County down the Cape, those areas, they will take an inmate for us back if they're going that way, and we can coordinate it.
No, but I'm just,
I know where you're going.
Physically transfer him and say,
no,
Joe's going to be coming to you for the next 2-3 months. We'll put him down there.
Well, we will do that on occasion. We will. No, that's a great question, because you know what we do regularly too? We have problematic inmates, and we trade each other too. We'll call up Franklin County, or we'll call up, Bristol County, and we'll just say, we've got an inmate here, real problem, either gang affiliations, a gang leader, somebody who's creating problems in jail, someone who's really misbehaved, someone that's creating a problem for us, and they'll have someone very similar down there, and we'll just switch. And we do that regularly. So we work together closely, but on your direct question of, we are separate entities, and then to finish that conversation on what other corrections we have in Massachusetts, those people that go to the court, and they go before the judge and they are sentenced to a felony conviction over 2.5 years, they will go to state prison. So that's when you hear people talk about Concord or Walpole or those things. Those are the state prisoners. They go there for extended sentences. Now, one thing we've worked on, which is, I hadn't really thought about this, talking about this, but now that we're on it, I hope it's okay. One of the interesting things we're doing in corrections now, we're trying to figure this out. Well, if the sheriffs are the closest to the ground, for example, say we have someone from Worcester County, and that person has been committed for an armed robbery to 15 years in Walpole. And now we know they're in their last year of their sentence and they're going to be released. We have started a program now where they will send that inmate to Worcester County, to us, because we are better at re-entry. Because our people, like my people in re-entry, we work with every inmate, Al. When they are 90 days out, our re-entry team meets with them and we assess where are you going, what you need medical care, you got to try to sign them up for medical, because if they need medical treatment, they don't get it, they're going to be right back where they started. Do they have job possibilities? So we have a lot of things that we look to establish them, to give them a support network, counseling, programs, anything we can to help them, because we do it for us. I mean, I'm doing it for the community.
Sure.
Someone, since we're sitting here in Milford, for example, if someone was coming back to Milford, I'd want to make sure, where are you going? What are you going to be doing? If you have a substance abuse problem, do you have a counseling? Can we get you into a program? If you don't have a place to live, we'll
we sure
find
don't
you.
want them coming back and, for whatever reason, committing the same crime again.
Right. So we've worked really closely with corrections now to sort of take those people, not only the ones we have in our care, custody, and control, and re-enter them back successfully, hopefully, so they don't recommit crimes. That's what this business is all about. And if we get people from state prison, I think the state prison system is recognized. It makes sense that if someone's in Walpole, wouldn't it make more sense to have them in the Worcester County facility, where they're more connected to the community in Milford as we are in Ashburnham and Spencer and Leominster?
Now, when you say most of your visitors are there because of drug issues,
right?
If they're in there for a year, are they over the drug problem? I mean, at that point, your body hasn't had whatever opioid or whatever you're craving.
Right.
Do they get over it by the time they leave? Or?
Well, that's a great question. I think that's probably the question of our times, frankly. I think you're talking about the essence of not only the corrections world we live in today, but almost society as a whole. I mean, think about it in this context, Al. I mean, you remember the Vietnam War, right? I mean, I read about it in history books. I remember as a little kid growing up in Worcester in a 3-decker, and I remember hearing about some of my neighbors' brothers and sisters didn't come back from Vietnam, so I'm old enough to remember Vietnam. 58,000 Americans died in Vietnam. Last year alone, over 70,000 Americans died from opioid addiction in the United States, including heroin and things like that. So we're at war right now, and it's happening inside our borders, and it's killing the very Americans who live inside our borders, a lot of young people. So this is the issue of our time. So now we take it to the next step. You're asking a great question. A year of sobriety, you would think, wouldn't you? Now, there's a lot of things to talk about. People come from various backgrounds. As I mentioned, 90%, just throw out a figure, 90% of people who are incarcerated today have substance abuse problems, disorders, whatever you want to call them, addictions, or whatever phrases. They change regularly, but the problem is the same. So they have these problems. They get incarcerated. We are a sober facility. So we do detoxify you, as I mentioned, and we have some medications
so
for that.
physically, I'm over it.
Well, it's even better than that, because this is what I want to explain. Physically now, we're a zero tolerance facility. Obviously, I can't tell you that never once has anybody tried or smuggled something in, because every correctional facility has that problem 24/7, 365. It's an ongoing battle. But it's one of our number one priorities. I mean, the reason I say it isn't number one, well, I think my officers coming to work and going home safely is a pretty darn important priority. and I want to make sure that inmates don't injure themselves or injure someone that worked there. So all these things are priorities, but security, obviously, big priority. And we have someone for a year, for example. We are going to have them detoxified. We do it in the most humane way we possibly can. There's a whole nother discussion about medically assisted treatment for incarcerated individuals.
Look, whatever it is, a year later, if I haven't had
Right.
any opioid supply,
Right.
physically, I would think.
Physically, your body should no longer have a craving. A year is enough to break your cravings for any type of alcohol physically, okay? The problem is we've learned is that it's a bigger picture than that. It's a lot of codependency disorders. There's mental health issues. There's dysfunctional family issues. There's stress issues.
Well, that's why I say physical, because I think of the psychological effects. How do you fix them coming from a horrible environment or a horrible family situation?
Right. Well, you can't in some ways, in the sense that people come to you as they are. But what we try to do is give people the skills, the coping mechanisms to work with us. Now, I can tell you right now, there are people that are incarcerated in my jail. Let's just use that 1 year example like you gave. It's perfect. Someone comes in from maybe breaking and entering several times. They've even been to some diversionary programs. They didn't work, and they just kept feeding their desire for some type of narcotic. And they end up getting before the judge for the 4th, 5th time. They say, you know what, we're going to sentence you to a year. Okay, they come to us. A year, they're with us. Now, this is what we try to do. We have a program, for example, I was giving a tour today of someone. It's called the STOP program. It's a standalone 36-bed facility. We get people in there who have addiction, but they also want to turn their life around. And it's with 6 months to go in their sentence, if they are the right inmate for this. Now, you don't come into our jail, have a bad attitude, create all kinds of problems, and they get rewarded with programs, okay? So you've got to meet us halfway. But if we get those folks who are there, they're clean and sober while they're incarcerated, so it may have been a difficult process, but they got there. Maybe with 6 months to go, they've shown the willingness to get into this program. In that program, we have so many different types of programming approaches we bring them, whether it be anger management, we have educational program, we have substance abuse, we have all these different cognitive skills that we bring professionals in that work with us, outside speakers, ways to reach the whole person. So then we try to transition them when it's their time to go. We try to find the right program for them in the community. Now, we also have another technique.
Now, what's the short stop?
Short stop is the same exact program, but we didn't have the resources to have this type of intense program in the rest of the jail because, well, when Middlesex County has 21 substance abuse counselors because they've got $70 million and I've got 7 because I've got $46 million, you see my problem. So
you still have 1,000 people to spread out.
Exactly. So what we did do is there was a grant that came down through the Public Safety Administration, through the governor's office. We applied for it. We got it. It allowed us to hire 2 substance abuse counselors, programming directors. We hired 2 great people, and we started the Short Stop program. That Short Stop program is our newest addition to our programming. It's in a different portion of the jail called Maxi C. These are inmates that have earned their way in. They may not have 6 months left in their sentence. They may not be eligible for the intensive 6-month program, but we will put them into the Short Stop program. And you know what? When we first floated this idea, some folks who've been to jail a long time said, I don't think these guys, they're getting out in 2-3 months. They're not going to bother with a program. You won't even fill the classes. You wouldn't believe we have waiting lists for those programs because the people who are doing the work are the most dedicated, compassionate people you've ever met. They work inside our facility and they want to help these people. And if these people come into the class, they will hold them accountable, Al. But if they do the work, they will flourish. And I'll tell you, I go to every graduation inside that jail. And I mean, on average, we have a graduation every month all over the jail with sometimes 10, sometimes 20, sometimes 25 inmates, whether it be anger management, substance abuse, education, people get their high set or their GED. I'm there to let these folks know you've put the work in. You wouldn't get the certificate if you didn't put the work in. If you don't put the work in and you don't have the right attitude, you're kicked out because we don't have time to waste on people that are just trying to, take advantage of the system because we do get, by law, they get some good time for attending these classes. So we make sure you earn that good time.
Earn your time.
You earn your time and you earn it by performance. These folks, when they get out, they are so much less likely to repeat offend than those that don't get the programming. There was a strategy at one time in corrections before my time, really more like the 80s, where it was like throw the key away, tough on crime. And believe me, I'm a former prosecutor. I put plenty of people away in my time, and I am a believer that some people need to be sent away for a long time. But that doesn't work when it comes to the reentry piece of people getting out of your facility. My job, and I believe this from day one when I announced I was running for sheriff, my job is to do everything in my power to make the Worcester County Sheriff's Department work to make this community a safer place. And that means keeping people off the street, but also 6,000 people go through our turnstiles every year, Al. Some of them are there for a day or two, they get bailed out, but there are thousands of people. I just want every person I've hired, I just ask them one question, will you join me in our mission to make this community a safer place? And that means we have to go to work every day with the right attitude. And it's easy just to write off inmates and just say, they're drug addicts or they're criminals and I don't want to work with them. Well, those aren't the people I'm looking for, because that doesn't help you or me or our neighborhoods. Because when these folks get out, we want them to be less likely to repeat offend, less likely to break into our homes, less likely to deal drugs to our kids, less likely to drive drunk and hit somebody. That takes a different commitment to corrections. But I couldn't be prouder of our office. And then, if you don't mind, I'd like to talk a little bit about the other side of the Sheriff's Department, which is the community correction side.
I was going to say, we've spent time on everything, but I think the STOP program and all, but organic farm?
Oh yeah.
We have a farm in Massachusetts?
We sure do. Well, we have so many programs at the jail I could talk about. Maybe we'll get a chance. I just had a city councilor in Worcester come up today, and we showed him. We house the mounted unit for the Worcester Police Department.
The K9.
No, the mounted, the horses.
Oh, the horses.
Yeah, we house them. City of Worcester wanted a mounted police unit for years because they know that they help with community relations. They know they help with surveillance. Think about it. If you're in crowd control on a busy night and you're up on a horse, well, number one, you can see better. Number two, you got a way to break down barriers of the community. So they wanted it for a long time, but they had nowhere to put them. They couldn't afford $1 million building stables. So the city reached out to us and they said, could you help? We know you had stables at one time. The Sheriff's Department had horses many moons ago. So we actually found a way to rehabilitate those stables through inmate labor, some supervision, $20,000 we got in funding for it, and we rebuilt those stables. And they are beautiful, and we have beautiful grounds, and we now house 4 horses for the Worcester Police Department. So on those grounds of 300 acres, when I first got there, Al, I said to myself, we've got all this beautiful land. I know it has farming capacity. Why don't we have a farm program here at the jail that we could utilize inmates? Now, be clear, we have a work release building, Al. It has about capacity for about 80 inmates. On any given day, there can be 30 to 80 in it. But these are our best behaved inmates. They earn their way into this building. They're not the people who pose you can't get in there if you have any type of violent offenses, things like that, because these are the people we will put on the inmate work programs that we send to Milford. Mm-hmm. And we will work, we've cleaned up the senior center, town hall, we help with the Milford cleanup, beautification day. These are inmates who have earned the right to get out. They're supervised by an officer, but they get out every day. Some have a little more restrictions on them. They can't go off site. But some of them will be used to beautify the grounds at the jail, mow the lawn, do the yard work, that type of thing. And some of them we found a beautiful program for. It was the organic farming program. And we started out, I'm not kidding you when I tell you this, we started farming about 10 acres about 5 or 6 years ago.
That's a good sized farm.
It's a very good sized farm. And in those years, we bought seed for $950, about $962 to be exact. And in those years we started growing about 20,000 pounds of squash, butternut squash, zucchini, corn. And as the program started growing and the inmates, it's a different type of inmate that enjoys the farming program. And I'll tell you why, it's kind of interesting. You're a 22-year-old inmate. You grew up in an age where you don't have, maybe the youth of today, they don't have as much patience maybe as other generations. In other words, instant gratification. Cell phone, I want to watch something, boom, there it is. Well, they would put a seed in the ground and they'd be looking the next day like, where is it?
Where's my corn?
Where they will love to go to a program and maybe paint a senior center or rake up a cemetery and get it ready for Memorial Day. They see that. but there were some older inmates we found, majority of them were the older inmates that enjoyed the farming program. So we had about 8 to 12 inmates we assigned to that program. Well, fast forward 8 years, we are now farming 13 to 14 acres. We're growing 30,000 pounds of organic fruit and vegetables. The inmates so love the program, they keep adding fruit and vegetables to it, new ones. And believe it or not, this is my favorite part of it. We are not only saved 20,000 pounds of food for the jail because we provide inmates the
You
food.
don't have to buy it
we have to
then.
buy it. We also distribute about 10 to 20,000 pounds of food to food pantries all over Worcester County. And the cost is under $400 now because we got a better deal on the seed. So we've been able to grow this program, give inmates skills, give them the sense of satisfaction of doing something productive. We've been on all over. Boston News has covered this. We've had drones from Channel 5 and 4 come out and do stories on this jail because it's become a very well-renowned program because it benefits the inmates. They will tell you incredible sense of accomplishment they get, and they get skills from it, and they also know that they're not only feeding healthy food to inmates, but they're providing healthy food to the community. And a lot of the places we bring the food, I go and make the deliveries as much as I can. And the one thing I hear from a lot of the food pantries and things is, Sheriff, you have no idea that this is like medicine for people. You know, they oftentimes have nothing but canned goods, which is, better than nothing.
So now you have fresh produce for the
Fresh
first
organic produce, and they say it's like medicine for people to see these beautiful fruit come into the facility and be distributed on like a daily or weekly basis.
Wow.
So it's a wonderful
So now,
program.
when you mentioned the equine program, I immediately said canine because I know you got a much broader
Oh yeah.
program for
Yeah.
canine unit and other pets.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Sure. Now we have 2 canine programs. So the first one came about when I first was sheriff, and I remember sitting with my inner staff, and we were going over, you start off with, what are we inheriting here and how do we move forward? And one of the things that came up maybe in the first month or two was, well, Sheriff, we have a canine program. It was about, we wanted narcotics detection dogs for the jail. I mean, people either, people trying to sneak drugs in or mail, and to give you some idea how ingenious people can be. We saw things like an inmate would receive in the mail a photograph of their kid. Well, guess what we found out? That when we had the right narcotic dog on it, they would sniff that thing, they'd sit down where they were trained to do, and we'd look at that closer, and we'd realize that they would peel open the photograph and put like Suboxone strips inside it and then re-glue it. These are things you can't detect by metal detectors or drug detection other than like a canine, something like that, trained for that scent. So obviously, when I heard the word that we have a bloodhound, it's 10 years old, he's going to be retired. We have only 1 narcotics detection dog left. He's 9, and Sheriff, we have no budget. Well, my response wasn't like, okay, let it go. And the reason you could have that discussion, sure, there are state police that have dogs. There are a few police departments in the county that have dogs, and Department of Correction have dogs. And if we were in a pinch, we could ask for them.
Yeah.
But I was not going to be running a facility with 1,000+ inmates, with a community that's had the support of dogs, and just let it go. So we found this incredible program where we adopt dogs from shelters. The new wave of dogs now.
Oh, how cool.
Well, think about this. People think, well, let me tell you about our first dog. This is a great story of how it happened. So we sent the officer. Now, these dogs are family pets, by the way. They're owned by officers at the jail. They will live at the house, but they're on call 24/7, you see? So they live at the home, they're a family pet, but they're on call, and the officer gets a vehicle to transport that dog. So he's at work, 1 shift a day. Usually we put it on the day shift, so the person who is working has the dog at the jail, and we use them daily. But if there's an emergency situation, he's available. So the first dog we adopted was Nikita. He was a little mutt from Puerto Rico, about 30 pounds. And I kind of was a little surprised when I first saw him too. And then it became really obvious that, remember now, we're looking for a narcotics detection dog. We do not, when I bring in my dog, if I go to a school and we bring them in, the kids will see them and they'll laugh. They'll think, they're expecting a German Shepherd, right? Like an attack dog.
A manly dog.
Right. Well, think about this. If I were at a correctional facility and I want to detect narcotics, I'm not looking to scare you. I want him to be able to walk up to you and walk around
nice
you.
puppy.
Right, because we want to detect those narcotics. We don't want to scare you. He's not an attack dog for legal reasons as much as any other. So this little fella, we got him for free. We found a program in Plymouth County Plymouth County Sheriff's Department has a training program for narcotics detection dogs and other dogs too. We sent them down, they got them trained for free. We got them for free. We have the veterinary services provided for free by these volunteer veterinarians throughout the county, one in Holden in particular, Dr. Friend, who's just been a tremendous friend to the Sheriff's Department. Anyway, this dog became one of, if not the most highly trained, sophisticated narcotics detection dogs ever in Worcester County. And that was him. The first day on the job, he found those Suboxone strips in the mail in photographs. He's trained to smell specifically opioids. And when he sniffs them, he knows he sits down. And when he sits down, the officer knows there's something going on. So he was trained to do it. He was so highly regarded that people wrote about him. He was on local news stations. And wouldn't you know it, but a PBS award-winning show in Los Angeles saw it. They have a show called Shelter Me. It's a national TV show. They put it on once a year. It has a famous host will host it. And anyway, the host will come out and tell stories about 2 dogs that were adopted and how they do something special in the community. Well, they had Nikita as one of their 2 dogs that year. And Nikita they told us when they filmed the show, they said, this is one of the most inspiring stories we've ever had. A shelter dog that could have possibly been killed, and instead he serves the people.
You saved the dog's life.
We save his life, and then he serves the people of Worcester County every day in a tremendous fashion. So we built that program, as you can imagine. We started with Nikita, and now we have 3 narcotics detection dogs, and we replaced our bloodhound because I wanted to have a bloodhound available to local law enforcement, whether it be a missing child, a senior with Alzheimer's, or a criminal investigation. I don't talk about or publicize those uses, but I can assure you in the last 6 months, our bloodhound has been utilized on several occasions and done some real remarkable work for the people in this county, and all of them were adopted by our department. Beautiful dogs. Amaya is our bloodhound. And then we started a second program, which I love just as much. And it started like this. When I was a state representative, there was NEEDS. You've probably heard of NEEDS. They're a dog training program. They train dogs to help disable folks, a lot of military. So they were in my legislative district. So I went to NEEDS and I said, I'm sheriff. I've read a lot about the therapeutic value of having dogs in a correctional facility. I think we have the ability to help you. Well, unfortunately, we couldn't match up with NEEDS because they have about a 2-year requirement to match up an inmate with a dog, or a 2-year training program. We couldn't give them a 2-year commitment. So it took us a while, but we found the right shelter to match up with. It's a 12-week program. They bring the dogs to our facility. They, again, live in this work-release building. We have 4 dogs usually in any given day. They are in a 12-week training program. These are dogs that are in this shelter. They're unadoptable. Maybe they jump up when they jump up, or they're shy, or they just aren't comfortable. They're not bad dogs. They just have been abused or mistreated or untrained, even potty training. So they bring them to the facility. We match them up with inmates that have earned the right to have this type of privilege. It's a privilege. We also have a backup handler too. So each dog gets 2 handlers. The dog will live in the room in the cell with the inmates. Oh. Yep. And there's a yard area where they train them. So for 12 weeks they train them. So now let me tell you the great thing about this program. Costs us nothing. The shelter provides the food, the training, and our inmates provide what they have, which the shelter said to us the first time we met them. They said, you have the one thing people need to train dogs that most people don't have, and that is people with time. Time. So these inmates, now this is the beauty of the program, Al. Fast forward now 5 years. Our first 10 dogs were adopted by our own employees. I think it was 12. People saw them in the yard. They're like, what a beautiful dog. Like, where's he going? And we said, well, he's up for adoption. And we were like, they want him. So it was so successful. But after 5 years, I can tell you this. We are, maybe 4 years is now, we're well over 60 dogs that we've had in our care. We have had, everyone has been adopted, over 60 adoptions. And make it better, we also have had a change in the inmate that work with these dogs. They are different people. They become more compassionate. Some of them will say it replaces them a sense of feeling or someone to belong, like their children. They maybe miss their family, but they have an opportunity to bond with this animal. They change as people. The block, the officers say, has never been safer. The stress level drops because when the dog walks around, everybody pats them. And dogs have that way to reduce stress and tension. So
it's kind of hard to be mad when you got a little puppy in front of you.
Yeah, so I mean, I can only summarize the program to say we've had no cost. We've saved 60+ dogs' lives, beautiful homes for adoption, and we've made our jail a better, safer place. And at the end of the day, the inmates involved in this program are less likely to repeat offend. It's a special program. I've actually presented it to a national conference in Chicago, and I asked out of hands. There was over 100 facilities present in that room, about 150. I asked, how many of you have canine programs for inmates in your facility? Because it was a medical corrections conference. And only 3 hands went up. And when we finished, the line was like 20 people long waiting to talk to us to get information to how they could start a program. And you started off by saying 0 cost, major impact. It gets people's attention.
Now, when I see the headlines that you have a self-defense awareness,
Oh, yeah.
is that because they're scared of being in the cells?
No, no, no.
I mean, you hear a jail, self-defense,
Right.
It's like, okay,
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
probably more to this story.
Yes, there is. No, thank you for bringing that up, because that has been our biggest initiative recently, and I'm very proud of the initiatives we've taken on, and some we've talked about today, like the organic farming that we started several years ago, or the canine programs and the horses and various things we've done at the jail to make our community a better place. But after my reelection in 2016, I sat my team and I said, look, what are we doing next? Like, we don't rest, we're not done, we're just getting started. We got a long way to go. I mean, frankly, I think it takes 8 to 10 years to turn a culture around, whether it be in corporate America or in corrections. It's a long turnaround, especially in a place that had a long-standing political culture, to turn that ship around. And I felt we didn't even really get to where I wanted to be for 5, 6, 7 years. Now we feel like our silos have been rebuilt. We've rebuilt the correction silo, the healthcare silo, the education, the rehabilitation, the transportation, the food services. We've rebuilt a lot of things, and everybody's working together now. So I started thinking beyond, outside the jail, and I have a program, and I'm going to get to this one because, for example, I have a program I brought to Milford several times. The chief always comes down. It's called Face to Face.
I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah, well, I mean, we'll talk about that in a minute then. But so this term, I was looking for a new idea, and we happened to find a credible partnership, and it's a tragedy. But out of tragedies, great things can happen. And you may remember this. If not, we'll refresh you. But I can't remember the exact date, but let's say in the last couple of years ago, there was a violent murder of a young woman. She came home from New York. Her name was Vanessa Marcotte. She's home from New York for the weekend. She told her mom she was going for a run, and she never came home. And she was found pretty quickly, unfortunately, on the side of the road, brutally murdered, disfigured. And the DA has tracked this perpetrator down, and he's in my facility right now. And I believe, God willing, if he's the right person, he will be sent away for the rest of his life. But the point was that poor Vanessa Marcotte and her family will never get Vanessa back. Right. And they have been, I can't even imagine being a father of 2 daughters. And actually, having grown up in the Wachusett region, and my kids went to Wachusett, and when I was a legislator, I represented Princeton. My best friend was from Princeton, and that's like a second home to me. So it really hit me extra hard, as all crimes do, but this one was like right in my backyard. So as luck would have it, in a way, somehow the Marcotte Foundation and we started a discussion. And it was about, what can we do to help you, like with your mission of preventing this from happening again? And then we talked about, with our training department, we could create a self-defense program for women in Worcester County, offered free of charge through the Vanessa Marcotte Foundation in association with the Worcester County Sheriff. And we wanted it to be not only for women, but taught by women. Now, I'll say this to you. Is it fair that, we should only provide this for women or whatever? I understand it. The reality of the world is this, is that women are far more likely to be abducted. Women are far more likely to be abused. Women are far more likely to be attacked in these kind of situations. So we felt, wouldn't it be wonderful if we could help make the Marcotte Foundation fulfill their mission of increasing the safety for young women in this community, or all women? So we brought it to our attention to our training staff. They put the word out to our correctional staff, and we had a dozen of our finest correctional women say, we want to be part of this, we want to be trainers, and we started developing a training program for it. So in addition to the actual self-defense you learn in this class, what we put together is a 2-hour presentation. Now, we've done it twice already, so we're on our way, and we're scheduling the 3rd one now. So this is happening. It's not a pipe dream.
When you say correctional women,
the correctional officers we have,
these are officers that are working all day
Right.
in the facility, and then volunteering their time to help the community.
Yep.
My hat's off to these.
No, they're wonderful. It's the kind of people we draw at the Worcester County Sheriff's Department. They're highly trained. As I mentioned, there's hiring standards. These are some of the finest people I ever met, and I felt what better than have the women who wanted to take the lead on this. So what we developed is this. We thought, we first talked about doing this. You know, do we do a multi-class presentation and all this? But we thought, in the world we live in today, I think the best thing we can offer people is a 2-hour class. One night, you come to this, and this is what we hear from the women who leave. In 2 hours, this is what you will learn. And the classes will be offered. I assure you we'll be bringing them down to the Milford area shortly, because we did the first one in Princeton, which was Vanessa's hometown, and we filled it in a matter of hours. And then we did our second one in Westboro last week, and it was full, and people were coming. We did it at the YMCA in Westboro, and so many people were coming up to our table asking how they could get in, because they didn't even send an email out that we asked them to get the word out, but it filled up so fast they didn't have to. But people were saying, can you please come here and do this again? We could fill it again. And we're just trying to move it around. And you know, we have limited resources, so we can only do this so often. But right now we're planning about 4 a year, and maybe we'll do them more. But this is what you learn. In 2 hours, the first thing we teach women in this program is situational awareness is probably the single most important thing you can do to protect yourself. And that means at any given time, assessing your situation. So you'll learn things like when you leave your home, if you're going for a jog, you're going for a walk, you're going shopping, wherever you go. First of all, let your family, let your friends know where you're going. There are apps you can put on your phone that will have maybe even make sounds and call 911 and things like that. But we also let you know, be aware of your surroundings, because being aware of it is half the battle. If you are in an area, remote area, you're alone, or even with one other person, be aware of what's happening around you, so you can assess your potential dangers. Don't go around, for example, if you go for a walk or run, put 2 earbuds in and tune the world out. I mean, should people be able to do that? Absolutely. And do I wish we lived in that world? Of course.
I wish for world peace.
Exactly. But unfortunately, that's not only is it dangerous, it's also almost like an advertisement that you're very susceptible to be victimized. So we teach a lot of skills. Just the first 10 or 15 minutes are about raising your situational awareness, and we give you certain information that you can take with you to help you perpetuate that type of safety. Then we actually get into the nuts and bolts, which is about an hour and a half of hands-on training. We try to limit like 4 or 5 people to each instructor, and we will teach women, for example, if someone grabs you by the throat, how can you break free of that? Well, there's a pretty simple technique that if someone was to grab your throat, you go up through the arms and you can break them pretty quickly. If someone grabs your ponytail from behind, there's a spin move you'll learn very quickly where you learn to go down and twist and get out of that. So in the end of the day, I referred to it earlier as self-defense, but what I really want people to understand what this program is, it's a 2-hour class where all I want for you to go to this class is put yourself in fewer dangerous situations, number one.
Learn to minimize the risk.
Minimize your risk, but if you do find yourself in a situation, we want you to be able to survive it, Al. So it's not, if you want self-defense, you might need to enroll in a class for karate.
This is not aggressive. This is get out and stay alive.
This is survive a situation, and that's what we'll teach you. In 2 hours, you'll gain that skill. So the 2 sessions we put on, the reviews have been outstanding. The response from the community has been outstanding. I want you to know we made one change, just to let you know. The first one we did for free, and it filled up immediately, but we noticed 4 people didn't come. And we thought, that's a shame, because we had a waiting list. So we added a nominal fee last time, $10, $15. And we get a t-shirt, a beautiful Vanessa Marcotte Foundation t-shirt. It's not about the money. The money goes to the Marcotte Foundation.
No, but if I got some skin in the game, I'm more likely to show up.
That's what we figured out. We had no shows last time. So if there is a fee attached, I assure you, it's very minimal, and it's just to ensure that we don't have empty spots, because it's too critical. Imagine if a woman didn't get in and she was the one who
she was the one the next day.
Yeah.
Now, face-to-face, we talked about many years ago.
Yeah.
Well?
Still going strong, Al. The only thing I'll tell you that one thing hasn't changed, and that drug use in this country has not gotten better. So I can't sit here and tell you that we're beating this problem, but I think we're addressing it as a nation, and we have a lot more work to do. But the one thing that has changed is the drugs and the approaches and the ages. So unfortunately, I think there's a lot of evidence that shows you can start bringing in drug programming to kids as young as 4th and 5th grade, believe it or not.
Oh my God.
That may be as simple as showing them a prescription pill container and tell them this is medicine, but it also can be extremely dangerous for you. And be aware if you come across this, you don't want to be taking it. You want to return it to responsible people. But once you get to the middle schools particularly, and I think that's our target audience right now, honestly, 7th to 10th grade particularly, those are the real years. But things have changed now since I talked to you last. For example, I remember when I worked with the health department in the city of Worcester. They came to me many years ago and they said, Sheriff, you're in the schools, you're talking about drug use, you've got a bully pulpit and you use it. You talk to the media. We'd like to tell you what the drug trends are we're seeing and let you bring it to the public. So one of the things, for example, since I probably spoke to you last, they came to me and said, you're not going to believe what's going on. We have an epidemic of vaping going on. Now, you know what vaping is, but 4 years ago, nobody really heard of vaping, you know? These kids today, and you can vape, the highest grade of marijuana, 90% pure, it's called butane hash oil. You cannot smell it, it's odorless, you cannot see it, it's plumeless, and kids are smoking it in school, right in front of their teachers, getting high, and nobody even knows it. And Al, this is THC that's 90% pure. Many of the marijuana, the rolled cigarettes and things like that people smoke throughout time, those are like 5 to 15% THC. This is 90% pure. It looks like almost like honey. But the example is vaping has come on the scene. I remember going on Fox News in Boston and they said there's a sheriff talking about this new trend. They called it a new trend. We tried to break that. So we talk about vaping. Kids are vaping alcohol now. Now, if you drink alcohol, it has to be processed by your body through your liver. You can vape alcohol directly to your brain. You know how dangerous that is? So we're talking about vaping. We've also brought in something new that they brought to my attention a few years ago. Have you heard of juuling?
Now, Juul like the e-cigarette? Or?
Yes, exactly. A couple of years ago, nobody had ever heard of juuling. I go into a school today. Now you're hearing a lot of ads on the radio and TV. 2 years ago, I would go into a school and I'd say to the teachers, I said, how many of you have ever heard of something called juuling? Not a hand would go up. I'd say to the kids, how many of you heard of juuling?
Bang.
All of them. They look like, they're like little computer drives there, something like that. You can inhale an entire pack of cigarettes worth of nicotine in one hit. They're trying to sell you this, it'll help you kick the habit of smoking cigarettes. First of all, there's no scientific evidence that vaping or juuling is safer for you than smoking.
How do I kick an alkaloid habit by taking higher doses of an alkaloid?
Exactly.
I mean, forget that I'm smoking it or the nicotine levels. I mean, I've had the unpleasant experience of doing a pack of cigarettes in like 30 seconds when I was at the USDA and somebody spilled a high concentration nicotine solution on my hand.
Really?
It was like somebody took a 2x4 to my head.
Wow.
It was unbelievable.
It went right through your skin?
Oh yeah.
Wow.
Now, I don't know if I had a cut or whatever,
Right.
but I remember it was not a pleasant experience. I can't imagine not through your skin, but actually inhaling it or, taking it directly. That must be unbelievable.
Well, it's a tragedy because people don't understand, young people. And when I do my face-to-face program, we're entertaining these students. If you just go in there and I sat there and lectured to them, they'd be sleeping in 5 minutes. But what I try to do is first of all, I'm 6'7", so I try to get their attention by just being rather tall. And then what I do is I walk through the audience and it's an interactive program. I show films of Lindsay Lohan, Charlie Sheen, play music by Eminem and Miley Cyrus, and we talk and we watch and we discuss. So one of the things we talk about is we have a video about juuling. It's a lot of newscasts about it, and I try to explain to them, juuling when you take one hit of a Juul, now a kid will think, oh, it's nothing dangerous. I can get it at the store. It's nothing. You take one hit of a Juul, your blood pressure is going to skyrocket.
Yes.
It can affect your heart rate. It is so dangerous. You could go into a stroke and you wouldn't have any idea why this would happen. No one's going to tell you these things. And that's one of the things. If face-to-face is about anything, the promise I made to this county was I wanted to be a community sheriff and help this community. And I felt the best thing I could do if I got that jail humming was try to get out there and talk to the next potential future customers of the jail. And those are the kids in middle and high school, and try to put myself out of business.
Well, for at least one resident, I applaud you for your integrity, obviously your passion, and for everything you're doing, because we have a list of things that you've saved millions of dollars for towns and really helped everybody. Again, Sheriff Lou's the one that we don't think about, but we're sure happy that he's changed the culture and done so many great things. Thank you for coming on. And as always, to our 6 loyal viewers, may God bless. I hope the only time you ever see Sheriff Lou or his staff is on this show or TV. But know that they're doing a heck of a lot of good things up at the county jail. Good night, all. May God bless. May tomorrow be a better night than tonight. And thank you.
Far too long since I've been home.